All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about a single, really powerful essay from 1923 that pretty much turned literary analysis on its head. I'm talking about T.S. Eliot's The Function of Criticism. This was an idea that totally reshaped how we even talk about art.
You've heard this before, right? That old saying, critics are just artists who couldn't cut it. It's this classic stereotype of the bitter, jealous person on the sidelines. But almost 100 years ago, the great poet T.S. Eliot came along with a completely different answer, and honestly, a much more powerful one.
Now, to really get how big of a deal Eliot's ideas were, we have to take a quick peek at the world he was pushing back against. See, before him, literary criticism was a very different kind of animal.
And you can really see the difference here. The style of criticism that was popular back then, which came from guys like Matthew Arnold and the whole Romantic tradition, it was all about feelings. A critic would tell you how a poem made them feel, or if it was, morally good. It was all personal, all subjective. And Eliot looked at this and basically said, this is messy. It's not reliable. It's not really helping anyone.
So this leads us to Eliot's huge, game-changing solution. He came up with something that sounded, well, kind of nuts at the time. He asked, what if criticism isn't an art? What if we treated it like a science? Yeah, this was a massive change in thinking. Eliot's argument was that good criticism had to be objective. It had to be logical and analytical. It needed to be a real discipline, with rules and standards. The point wasn't to share your personal opinion. It was to actually investigate the text based on facts. And the heart of this idea is something he called the impersonal theory. It's a simple but really powerful concept. The work of art is what matters, not the critic. The analysis has to be all about the text itself, the words, the structure, how it works, while you actively push your own personal feelings and biases and your own moral compass to the side.
Which brings us right back to that whole failed artist thing. Eliot just threw that idea right out the window. In fact, he argued the complete opposite. He said that to be a truly great artist, you have to be a great critic, especially of your own work. That ability to step back, to analyze, to judge, that's what makes a good poet a great one.
Okay, so if criticism is now a science, it's got to have tools, right? A method. So what does this new and improved Eliot-style critic actually do? Let's open up the toolkit he put together.
Eliot actually laid out a super clear process. It's basically 3 steps. First, you lock in on the facts of the work right in front of you. Second, you put that work into the bigger picture of literary history, which he called tradition. And third, you do your analysis with your brain, not with your gut. It's about intellectual rigor, not an emotional reaction.
Now that second step is a big one, comparing a work with tradition. That word is probably the most important piece of this whole puzzle. So what on earth did he mean by tradition?
For Eliot, and this is so important, no work of art just pops up out of nowhere. It exists in a continuum. So to really understand a brand new poem from 1923, a critic has to know how it's in conversation with everything that came before it, all the way from the ancient Greeks, through Shakespeare, right up to the novels of the last century. Tradition is really the entire ongoing conversation of literature throughout history.
So, with this new scientific toolbox and this deep sense of tradition, what is the critic's real job? What's their purpose in all this?
Well, according to Eliot, the critic isn't there to give a movie review, thumbs up or thumbs down. Their job is to illuminate the work for the rest of us. They explain how a piece of writing achieves what it does. They break down the nuts and bolts of how it creates meaning, and by doing that, they actually help to set the standards for what great literature even is.
Let's just circle back to that comparison with Matthew Arnold one last time. Arnold said criticism should be a disinterested endeavor, which, sounds nice, but it's also pretty vague. Eliot took that fuzzy idea and gave it some serious teeth. For him, it wasn't about just sitting back and appreciating something from a distance. No, it was about getting in there and doing the hard work of precise textual analysis. He gave the critic a real concrete job.
Okay, so this was all happening about a century ago. It's cool history for sure, but why does it matter today? What's the takeaway for us right now?
Look, Eliot was very clear about this. Criticism is not the main event, art is. A critic isn't a creator. But, and this is the whole point, good, smart criticism serves art. It makes the whole environment better. By demanding intelligence and skill, it raises the bar for artists themselves and helps all of us appreciate what we read on a much deeper level.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. Think about it. We live in an age of instant reactions, of emotional hot takes that just flood the internet 24/7.
In a world that sometimes feels like it's drowning in pure opinion, maybe T.S. Eliot's call for a logical, fact-based, and impersonal kind of criticism isn't just relevant, maybe it's more important than it's ever been.